도시 정비
Okay, let's do the four limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Simchen damje dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju jik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa ju jik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindrawa ju jik, nearing chak tang ni tang drawe tang num chempo la ni pa ju jik. Okay, so I've called the talk today to go with the death and dying that we were doing before, an ultimate view of bereavement and grieving. But I told all of you, I really want you, and I want this on the recording, I want you to see this bereavement not only in terms of losing somebody, but in terms of losing everything in your life. Not only in terms of changes, in terms of divorces, in terms of everything where you lose and where you have to go through some kind of grieving, not so much grieving, in some people's cases, yes, but where you have to go through all the pain and suffering of great change in your life, whatever it is. And so I want you really to see it in terms of this, because for me, from day one, when I started counseling, and a lot of you know this, bereaved people started coming to me. I don't have so many now, as much as I used to, but I can remember when I was about 22 or something, and the first parents whose son had drowned came to me, and I remember looking in the mirror and saying, oh my God, what are you going to tell them? And then the minute they were there, I kind of had this feeling, this relationship with bereavement and with bereaved people that came straight away. Okay, so going through everything that I've gone through with many, many people, I really have a first-hand experience of that bereavement, which is really important. And also, for those of you that are not going through changes or grief or pain or whatever it is, suffering, which are very few of us, okay, I want you to see these talks as a way, this that I'm doing on bereavement, as a way of being able to help other people who are going through bereavement. And we all have somebody, somewhere in our lives all the time, be it the supermarket woman or be it a close friend or someone going through loss and bereavement. So it's really, really important that you use all of this teaching for that. So I'm going to start, and you can really debate me at any point, that we have to ask ourselves over and over again, what am I doing in this life? What's it all for? What's the bottom line of our purpose? I have all these little limited purposes and then they're over, but what's the bottom line? Not the little reasons, but the real true intent. Now, Robert and Rachel Olds, in their book called Luminous Heart of Inner Radiance, said in their book, the little butterfly that flew into our cabin at the end of 9 years of retreat in the wilderness had iridescent blue-black color on her upper wings, which echoed the depth of the essence we had experienced. And on the wing, this blue-black color wing, were the clear shapes of 2 circles joined, just like that, 2 circles joined. And she says it was called, when she saw the butterfly, simple union. The little butterfly was one of the many expressions of the essence within which is an intent that is woven through the entire wondrous expression that is life. And they said, this core intent of such deep love and brilliance can burn or nurture you. Such an interesting thing. That deep love of what this core intent is about can burn or nurture you. It's up to you. Remembering that if you attach, it's definitely going to burn you. If you use what you've got without attachment, you might even get nurtured even in loss. Very important point, okay? And they said this core intent of such brilliant, deep love and brilliance has union at its fundamental heart, a union of return. This is the main point of our life, our purpose, to blend our very being back into its essence. You know, we forget that. With everything going on in our lives, we forget that that's what we're here to do. And this is the main point of our life, our purpose, to blend our very being back into the essence, to shed all that veils this union which we're going to talk about what the union is, because bereavement is such an amazing thing that does that. But think about it. In the golden ages, or when we first started coming into existence, which doesn't have its beginning, okay, we separated ourselves out. If you take the story of Adam and Eve, it's already when we were separated out. We left that Garden of Eden to go out on our own. We took the ego as our role. So when they talk about the story being at the beginning of the Bible, it's so wrong, because that was much later on. It was a very good symbolic story, but it was much later in our lives, when we had already gone into duality, when we had separated ourselves, and then we felt naked and alone. We didn't have the protection of abundance and the essence of who we were. Now, can you see that bereavement, especially tragic bereavement, what we call tragic, it's not really tragic, but what we feel is tragic, like the loss of a young child or the loss of a child, you know, that kind of thing, of which I've had so many people that have gone through that. Can we see that bereavement, loss, grief is this golden opportunity, open portal to unity, back to the essence? When bereavement hits us, and I've seen this so many times, we have nowhere to turn, nowhere to hide. People might comfort us a teeny bit, but in general, the world becomes a gaping wound of pain, suffering, grief, anger, cheatedness, hopelessness, no solution. Yet searching for one, desperation, depression. And it is at that very moment that we can create a return to this essence. That's the time we can return. We don't have to wait for a bereavement. We can do it now. And that's, if we can create it, if we're ready to really see that. So when the rug is pulled out from under your feet, it feels that there's nothing to support us. I know from all the parents that came to me and all the people, Bern, I'm sure you remember we had a group of mothers who'd all just lost their young husbands. A whole group, can you imagine? A whole group of mothers that were widows at a very young age, like Bern was included in that. Such a difficult thing, you know, it's hard enough later on, but at that stage when you're young and stupid and dependent on some man or something like that, I had this whole group of people. And when I saw that they come to a point where there is nothing that feels supportive, so they run here to the religion, to this, to that, to a therapist, to this, and it feels like nobody can. I call it taking the begging bowl. I used to call it taking your begging bowl and just going all around asking someone to fill that bowl just to take away that terrible pain. And maybe when we get that desperation, maybe this is the moment to return to our essence, to see that its expression. the expression of the essence, which is that bereavement, is to know where we belong and what our ground truly is. That this that we are enduring is dreamlike, like you say in your prayers, a nightmare that will pass. I mean, I was thinking last night of those parents in Israel, you know, where these six people were shot. And I mean, to go through the horrors of that, I was doing a lot of prayers for the people who died, because I think that's also, you waiting, you're hoping, you want to go home, and then suddenly your life force is cut off. And for these parents, I mean, it seems such a futile thing. And to be able to come to terms with that is the most heart-wrenching thing. And I'm looking at it because it's closely related to me, but there's so many places. Look at Sudan, look at Gaza, look at everywhere where people are just completely and totally bereft. They've just got nothing to actually, they've got nothing to show about anything, but everything. And you can really ask and talk about this. Everything that happens to us is merely the expression of the essence. And this expression, although it's always perfect, it's perfect, but we can't see it because there are two ways of seeing that expression. One is pure and luminous, and one is impure, coarse, and deluded, depending on how we choose to see it. But always know and always have in the back of your mind that this expression, this terrible thing that has happened to me, this pain, I think especially where your children die in what we might call the most useless and futile way. You know, why would they be chosen? Why would they be at a music festival? But you see, we can never tell the answer to that because we can't see the history of that consciousness. We can't see the whole history and why it is needed for those beings and for those parents. We can't see it, and you definitely can't tell that to anybody, because unless they're really on a deep spiritual path, because there would be no understanding of that whatsoever. So when we look around the world with all its suffering, thinking, there's something so wrong with how people and all beings have become. So much disharmony and pain and suffering. Something has gone drastically wrong in how we see and perceive this whole world. We know this firsthand when we go through a terrible loss. And you can share with me your losses. I just want to come to how we do this. So what are the two little circles that were joined together on the butterfly? They are the simple union of the essence and its expression. And what does that mean? It means that we understand, even though we're going through the pain, and I'm coming to that in a moment, we understand that the life we're living, the identity we're adopting, I'm calling it adopting because it is only a temporary adoption, are all transient, but should always be in union with the essence. They should always be who we truly are. But we're not. We're not in essence. How can we learn to get there? Well, one of the ways is through deep suffering, unfortunately, because people often ask me that question. So does that mean we have to go through suffering to learn the lesson? I go, not at all. Because I learned the lesson. I didn't have tragic bereavement in my life, thank goodness. But I learned the lesson by watching other people suffering. And I really learned that lesson so deeply inside me as to just often, when they were so desperate, I just used to cry with them, because there was nothing else to say. There was no more to say. When parents like these hostages that have been killed, when they say, what could the purpose be? How? You can't give them a dissertation at that time because they're not even ready to hear it in any way or any form. So you just have to be there and say, I know. And many of them, you know, I often used to find such funny things because in my old house, I had a lounge and then I had a playroom where I consulted. So then people used to come that way, sit in the lounge and wait, and then come through for their consult. So sometimes I used to come through to get the next person, and there was sitting one of these bereaved people. And I'd go, "What are you doing here? You know, I haven't got time to see you now." They said, "Doesn't matter. I just want to sit here and be near you." You know, I felt that was such a wonderful thing that I could do, that in their absolute pain and suffering, I could actually just be a source of some kind of comfort or self. And I think all of you can do that, because in the beginning, you can't give the philosophy. You've got to be there with the pain, and I'm going to explain exactly why in a moment, okay? But what I want to say is, if we understand that everything we've adopted is transient, who we truly are, then we can really let go of all we deceived ourselves eventually to be permanent through bereavement, grief, and loss. In golden ages, we wouldn't have needed to do this because we were in harmony. We wouldn't have had tragic losses because people had 500 years lifespans and things like that. So we wouldn't have had that. But the Buddha called the three messengers, I read this somewhere and I liked it so much. He called the three messengers sickness, old age, and death. And the messengers are sent to awaken us. That's all they sent. Now, there was a Zen story about a professor visiting a Zen master. Okay, and he said, "I've come here and I really want you to teach me what you know." Okay, so the Zen master offered him tea. He was very happy to have the tea. The master takes the teapot and pours the tea in. And when the tea comes to the top of the teapot, he just continues pouring in. And the tea starts overflowing everywhere, making a huge mess on everything. And this professor says, "Stop. What are you doing? Have you gone nuts? What are you doing?" And then the Zen master stops with all the mess everywhere and he tells him, "You, like the cup, are full of opinions and preconceptions, like the tea overflowing. Before I can give you any teaching, we need to empty the cup of all your preconceptions and your identifying with the contents of your life. Then only can I teach you some truth." That's true. Because, you know, when I have to go on a trip where honestly I can actually say to all of you, I was virtually of no value to anybody for the trip, because, you know, I mean, other than the children whom I love, of course, there are 5 little boys in London, 5 little grandchildren, you know, and by the time I've had some of them for an hour, I'm like ready to collapse on the bed, you know. I don't have the strength and the energy, especially my daughter's youngest one, who is a terror. He's a terror. We took him to a play in London, you know, and he's not even 3. He's not holding hands in the streets of London. You know, you've got to run after him and you've got to grab him by the shirt and everything. Well, I mean, I know that's part of life. That's part of your karma. That's part of what you've got to do. And they interrupt everything. You can never do a prayer or have any time to sit. But then I look at myself and I say, well, that is what I need to do and what I need to be at certain times of my life. And I need to accept that. But we need all along to tune into the empty space of our mind rather than identify with the contents. The master needed to shock the professor into a new way of viewing everything. He really did. And bereavement shocks us into a new view, a completely different perception of everything. And some get through it, some don't. Some people, I've seen people, I heard of someone recently who's made an absolute shrine in the graveyard at the cemetery for her child that died, and goes there and you know, has made flowers around it and sweeps around it and puts new flowers in every day and goes to visit the grave every single day and talk to the child. I mean, you know, why can't we understand that that child is in you? You just have to tune in to the love that is there. You don't have to go to the grave. Going to the grave every day and prostrating and being absolutely desperate would hold that person back. You know, when they've finished with the life and gone and over, that would hold them back tremendously. So we really have to understand this. And we can come to talk about it now even more, okay? We can't preserve the old relationship. I remember one woman that I was counseling. She invited me to her house, and I went into her house. Her child had been dead for about 3 years, 2 years by then. And the bedroom of the child had not been touched, down to the brush of the child that still had parts of his hair in. She'd left the bedroom exactly like that. And the thing is, when you look at something like that, when I said to her, what is this? She said to me, you know what? I just pretend that he's gone on holiday and that he's coming back. Okay? I mean, how are you going to learn? How are you going to grow? What is going to happen with that? I mean, it's got to come to a point one day where you come into the empty room and maybe you scream or whatever you do or have a breakdown or something. But what I want to say right here, and I'll throw it open in 2 minutes, what I want to say here is that the human pain must come first. Okay? It must come first before the understanding of the spirituality. And I'm going to give you beautiful teaching from Tralle Gamkon, who talks about the ordinary consciousness versus he calls it the transcendental consciousness. And I'm going to talk about that. But I always had this false belief that if people came to me for bereavement and they had a spiritual approach, it was a lot easier to help them and serve them, and I could help them better through their pain. But something I came across many times were people who seemed to understand, the spiritual side of grief, but made the big mistake of believing that they were past the human side of grief, as though with the spiritual approach, you skip the whole human approach and you skip that. They would philosophize about the whole experience. I know this is God will. I know my child is in a better place. We have to be strong and courageous in accepting that. Even one person that I knew quite well in recent years who just said, well, who wasn't spiritually aware, which is at least a little improvement, but who actually said, you know what? You just have to get on with life. Okay? You have to get on when you lose somebody. For me, that's a lost opportunity, because if you go into some kind of state where you just get on, the feelings would be repressed. And what this approach means is that the waves of emotion get repressed, okay, completely repressed, cut off, suffocated in an attempt to bring out what they've learned spiritually. And this is part of one of the end steps of grieving, but not a beginning step. Why? Because we need to experience the pain, the grief, the depression, the anger, the desperation, all the searching, all the raw emotions in order to be able to view it in its true perception. You won't view it in its true perception in the beginning, but later you definitely will if you're on a spiritual path. And all of you know that the truth about these raw human emotions is that they're actually wisdoms if you look deeply. So the pain then becomes the mirror to show you. It becomes the discerning moment, discerning wisdom discerns between earthly and spiritual ways, becomes the discerning moment. It becomes the equalizing of everything in your life. The wisdom of equality means we all equal, we all go through this. This is universal. The spaciousness of the essence, that even though I'm mourning, there's so much space to put all my negative and positive stuff into. And even when you've done it, the wisdom of perfected action, knowing at the end how to use it and how to help others through it. So when we don't go through the pain, when we skip the pain, then we do not get to see the real truth. Then what happens is it becomes like an intellectualization. Okay, we can't skip this process because the raw emotions are the truth. We just can't see it at that point, particularly in the beginning. But in alchemy, everything, all the metals have got to go down to the negredo, the base metals. And so the experience of true grief challenges who we are. We just can't put ourselves together in the way that we did before. We can't put ourselves together. And that's the point. We weren't supposed to go back to our old temporary identity. We weren't supposed to put on the clothes of a new identity yet. We have to lose that ground of being completely to gain this totally new perspective. And many people try and use distraction, like people say, come on, I'm taking you out, you need this. Those are all okay, because sometimes you do need to have a break from whatever you're going through, okay? Or numbing the pain, taking pills to take away the pain, or denial, pretending, like I've just told you about, may help for the moments, but not for long. Something is calling to us. And the only way to relieve the beginning frantic pain is to find out what it is. And that's where people go with the begging bowl. I see them. Many came to me, then they went to other people, then they went to the rabbi, then they went here, then they went there. And I never took that as the fact that I wasn't helping. I knew that begging bowl was part of it all. And will somebody, fill this for me somehow? Will somebody fill this for me? I know that absolute desperation. Okay, so I just want to finish 2 more paragraphs. I just want to say, in addition, at the same time that the human response is happening of the pain, that's how we learn the truth about human experience and what all humans feel. And that is the cause of real compassion for all sentient beings. And that is the cause of the circle joining each other like that. When we actually go through the pain and we really realize it's such a universal thing. And the Buddhas are beings who know everything about everything. When you've got an awakened mind, you know everything about everything. And that includes the coarse perception of sentient beings. The experience of bereavement teaches us to know. And the famous story of Kissa Gautami, who lost her child. And in those days, in the time of the Buddha, in those days, when you lost your child, you lost your full identity, you lost absolutely everything. And she was running around with this child, trying to get people to bring it to life. I think you all have heard this story. And eventually she came to the Buddha and she put her dead child's body there. And she said, please, I've heard you've got magic. Can you bring this child to life? And the Buddha didn't say to her, darling, listen, it's not possible to bring the child to life. He's already gone. The Buddha said, go to a house that has got a mustard seed, but a house that has never known sorrow. And if you can bring me 1 mustard seed from a house that has never known sorrow, I will bring your child back to life. So she went from house to house to house. And each house, she landed up counseling people about all their sorrow. It was his skillful means that he used. He used skillful means. He didn't say to her, no, I can't bring your child to life. He wanted her to understand things in her language. And only by going from house to house, asking for a mustard seed and hearing everybody's tragic story, could she give anything. And could she come back and then say to him eventually, please, will you bury my child? And she took a spiritual path after that, Kisagatomi. It's a famous bereavement story. So grief goes together with loss, not only the death of a loved one, divorce, unemployment, being retrenched and not having finances, relocation. When your children grow up and that empty nest syndrome when they leave, especially today, and immigration and natural disasters and illnesses and on and on and on, losing any relationship or any state, in all of these, we can go through that roller coaster of emotions and struggles and adaptations and pain. And grief and loss gives us that opportunity to change and to look at the deeper questions of life, find the true meaning. We can't avoid the emotional journey to get there. For me, the quicker people put themselves together after a really heart-sore thing, the less chance we have to find our true purpose. We need to go through uncertainty, unpredictability, loss of a predictable and safe world, because that is ego's journey. Ego wants to know, where am I going after this? When I sell my house, where am I going? What am I doing? What's happening with me? That's ego's journey. And we need to go through that uncertainty and look at it differently. There's no such a thing in bereavement as going through a stage and then completing it. We return to lots of stages, million times: anger, depression, acceptance, desperation. And we're not sure. Then it feels reasonable, and then it gets unreasonable. We have to, in a way, and I want to talk about this later, we're going to look at the ordinary mind versus the transcendental consciousness. But I want you to see that both are very, very important in whatever you are going through. So let me throw it open, then we'll do a little meditation, and then we'll go to the difference in consciousness. Maybe, Bern, you want to say something that hits you in all the things I've blabbed and blabbed about.
Everything's hit me. It's just, you've just taken the lid off. I don't know where to start. I've been through everything. There's nothing I can add to what you've said, because I went through every single stage. I went through every single begging bowl. I went through, been there, done it. The changes now are so different, but everything is culminating again into grief.
So it's your next phase of development.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm finding for the first time.
Don't spit tears, let them be, because it's so
No, I can't, because there's just too much happening.
okay, but
I've just got to keep it. I've got to keep it together. I've got 3 days, and I've just got to keep it together. I am totally isolated. Kids have their own lives and their own mega problems.
Yeah.
And I can't, there's just no one.
It's absolutely true, but look where you're sitting now.
And I'm sitting on the floor. You can't even see where
I'm on the floor, but look at the group.
I'm sitting on a box on the floor.
But look at the group you're sitting in.
And this is where I'm home. This is actually.
Exactly. And isn't it ironic that I happen to be talking about that today? I mean, exactly what you go through. So you can actually say one of the important things that people always ask me is, am I sane? Do you think
I can tell you now that I'm not sane at the moment. I can tell you that I'm not.
insane because
and I'm giving myself permission not to be sane.
okay, you can be insane. That's no problem to me. But what you can't be is you've got to see that what you went through before, and I can remember with Burns sitting with her, and I remember that the doctor prescribed so much medication. Do you remember? And I said to her, when she was sitting in my room, I said to her, you know what? I actually can't help you when you're on such medication because you're not even going to remember what I say when you go home. But she's got that tenacity, which will get you through this, to actually go and get herself off the medication and come back for more. And she's still here to this day, which is
And I won't
absolutely.
take medication now.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what's beautiful is for you, it's so clear for me in the distance is that sometimes, like she went through absolutely tragic bereavement. It was horrific. Everything, the ground was taken away from her. She didn't know how to cope. She even told me she didn't want to live and she wanted to take herself and her children, they were little, and just do away with them, which is really a normal thing that we feel, very normal. But you know what? You've reached a particular point from that. You went on your spiritual journey. And sometimes, in order to go even higher, in order to go more open, which you'll only be able to see in retrospect, sometimes we are tested again and again. And each time, what is absolutely beautiful is that you can, when I'm teaching this, that you can see, oh my God, this feels so terrible at the moment, but actually it's no thing. Actually, it's not tangible. Actually, it's going to be part. And actually, I could scream and rant. This one guy I was reading, it was also in Trale Gangchon's book, he said, go into a quiet place and just scream and cry and rant, he said, and then collapse on the floor. He said, and then you feel your nature of mind, coming forward when you're really having a terrible time. And I think, honestly, I think what you're saying makes such sense. It's the next era. And so
Yeah.
after this, you're going to be soaring
Yeah.
the skies, really.
Yeah. Look, I know that. I actually do know that.
I
At
know
the
you.
time, it's so hard. There's
But
so many decisions with absolutely nobody to run anything by.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't care now. Whatever it is, but I'm packing up. They're demolishing in 3 days' time. I've got to be out of here in 2 days. You must see, I've got to get everything packed up again.
But what's the bottom line of that? Not
I don't need anything. I don't need anything. I've got nothing. And whatever little I've got is still got to be packed up because this is turning into a war zone. It's total demolition of everything.
but just for a
And I'm going to
short.
be out of here for 3 months. And I'm
Yeah.
giving you warning next week. I don't know what type of, I'm moving twice. Next week, Monday, I'm actually moving to another place. I do not know what type of Wi-Fi I'm going to have. So I'm hoping somebody will be there to be able to do next week, Monday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'll only know when I get there. And
Okay,
then after 2 weeks, I move again. And then I'll be there for 3 months.
good. Listen,
Okay. Just sorry. And this is being recorded and I'm embarrassed.
worry. Don't,
Edie, please won't you edit this out? Not
doesn't
even up for discussion. She can cut it out.
okay.
Now that I know it can be done.
Because it's lovely for people to hear. I think that these stories are wonderful because I think when people are going through real dire straits, it's like absolutely unbelievable message to people. People say to me when they hear people asking or sharing, they love it. They really love it. So I don't worry about it. Just be well and be in touch with all of us so that you can keep that balance. Any other questions, comments, anything that you want to say? Because a lot of you have been through bereavement and everything you might really want to say of what I have said here. Please, Karen.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say something for somebody who does not know how to grieve or understand grief, what and also having lost everything and everyone and is still continuing. They're just two things. First of all, for Mel, I wouldn't like this to be edited out or redacted, because you are giving a gift to so many people that you are human. That's what I have to say for Mel. I mean for Bernice. So I think it's like so important. Having lost everything and everyone, I realized that I learned to detach totally. I don't mean emotionally, because when I hear Bernice cry, I cry. That's why I say this is so important. I worked, I don't know if I've told you before, for the Chevra Kaddish in Cape Town. I volunteered and I watched people fighting over the bodies. I watched the maltreatment of bodies. And when people were like murdered or whatever, I could actually see the person in front of me before I'm told, oh, you're going to do the body. I would recognize which came out of a Jewish old age home, which hospital, what place. I think the Jewish people in general don't give a damn about the people, their people. You could know straight away that, oh, that's a Jewish old age home. And I know a lot of us here are Jewish. So I'm saying is, having lost everything, like when suddenly I find, like a book, and that Buddhist fasting book, I remember I showed you before you left. I had it. It was one of the books that survived. I haven't bothered with it. It's still sitting open here. Another thing is, because I am in constant pain and I'm meant to be on so much medication, I've cut the medication to probably like a tenth of what I should be taking. So I do practice Tonglen and take on the pain. And I know, like in future, it is going to get worse, but I don't put myself there, because what is future?
Yeah, good.
So I'm just trying to, I don't know if this helps anybody or
It's very
Bernice.
helpful, and I'll tell you why it's helpful. Because what you're saying is very important, because we all have to ask ourselves, especially those that have gone through, I know some of you have gone through horror of horrors, in your life, and you have to keep asking yourself as well, please show me the total picture. Because when I look at a person like you who really has such a good understanding of spirituality and what it really means, I can mark you for this lifetime. If you were getting assessment from me for this lifetime, okay, I would mark you with a very high percent, and so would I mark Bern with very high percentage mark that you've passed the test. Just what's so important about what you're saying is, none of us are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that is such a difficult thing to accept, because when you lose somebody who's so dear to you, and you really are, in the most terrible, bad way, and you feel so awful about it all and everything, you have to use those wisdoms. What is the mirror showing me? And when you use those wisdoms, it's so amazing, because you begin to learn, what was it? This is after you've gone through the raw pain. And that's why I'm saying going through the raw pain is very important to see the truth. But afterwards, you can say, what is it that I'm being shown? What is it? Because we all have the karmic disposition. And that's why I want to give you the very brief thing of the ordinary consciousness and the transcendental consciousness, or the nature of man. Because when we look at it, we're in the right place according to the karmic imprints that we've got. Now, they are all temporary, transient, but trust me, when you're going through them, it's horrific. You know, it's really horrific. You can't bear it anymore. So what I'm saying is, it's really, really important what you're saying, because you came out at the other end with a total awakening. Now, that's all I can ask for. That's all any master could ask for, that you come out with a total awakening. You know, last night, what I was doing was, I have these beautiful albums of all my trips to the masters, to Sammy Ling, to Holy Out. I've had these albums. So what I decided when I was getting not rid of all the photos, putting them into envelopes, and then I'm going to get them all on a stick. But my spiritual ones, I thought, I can't. Because I thought, you know, we were doing plays, and there were all the masters sitting grinning in the plays. They were loving them, and it was all on one big page. Looked so beautiful. But last night, I changed my mind, and I thought, I can't take these heavy albums. I really can't. I would love them to be in a center. If you were all walking in here, I would leave them like that, you know. But I thought, I have to take them out. So I took out all the different phases. And it was unbelievable, because once, I didn't remember this. Bern, you might remember this. I was at Sammy Ling, and this girl, Sarah Lionheart, and we did a song and a dance in front of the whole community, a Dakini dance. You know, I've forgotten about it. We were the Dakinis. Lama Yeshe Rinpoche was sitting on the thing, and we were dancing and singing and bowing, and we were these Dakinis. You know, I forgot that I ever did it. I can hardly remember. Do you remember that, Bern? But, you know, I had to take all these photos out, these memories. I couldn't even remember doing it there. I really couldn't remember. And I thought, you know, this really is a transient life. How did I get to do a Dakini dance in front of all those people? Am I mad? Am I nuts? You know, but we
That's
did.
it. Well, one has to, like Bernice says, we're insane. I'm saying we, not her, we. Because how do you judge sanity or insanity? I mean, you know, I have a sister-in-law who, well, she's gone out now, thank goodness, but I mean, who will come in, and I can't stand this. Your parents, your brother, you're this, you're that, your friends, your lover, they're all turning in their graves. And I mean, I've learned just to shut up and let it go. And I mean, I've learned that's the only anger I really hold. I've used the word hold, so I haven't let go of it. And that's why I'm here.
Because she says yeah, I mean, I understand that. I really understand that. And it's very important for all of you to see. You might have lovely times with it when you really go into a very deep spiritual journey, but you also have opposition at every level. And people say you're mad and you're crazy. And that's okay. I have the same thing, you know.
Yes, but for and again, for Bernice and anybody that think, I'm saying personally what I've been through in my life, and I'm sure we'll always say, oh, how could you have gone through that? You know, it's so much worse. So you'll say, but if you were to hear my life story, oh gosh, how did you live through that? Exactly. I'm saying we can't compare one to the other. But I'm saying we're all sane, insane. It doesn't matter. That's a label.
And also, what is so amazing is that the kind of things you've been given, like the loss of your parents, the loss of your brother, the loss of everything and everywhere, only something you could have coped with. If that happened to another person, they would be They would be in a mental hospital.
Mm,
And that's what you've got to realize, that when you get very difficult tests, they are only given to you because you have the energy and the ability to cope with it, even though at the time it doesn't feel you have. And Jilly, you should be talking also, because you've also been through everything and anything. So it's very important, all of you. But let's just do a little meditation, and let me just start on that, looking how we are affected in bereavement by both the sides of our consciousness. But let's just do a little meditation. So get into your posture. And I want you to just really breathe in. And when you look at the sky of your mind, or the real sky outside, not the real sky, the sky of your mind is as real as the one outside. But if you look at the outside, you will see the vast space of that sky, okay? And I want you to understand that your mind is as vast and spacious as that sky. And why I want you to feel it, not think it, is because in the vast spaciousness of that mind, true nature of mind, everything can fit. Everything can go there. Good, bad, it makes no differences. Heartache, happiness, exaltation, everything can fit into that absolute nature of mind. And so when we are really going through a terrible time, it is very important to come to that vast spaciousness and breathe it in through your nostrils to the count of 3 or 4. And breathe it out. And as you breathe it out, you just let everything be. Just completely present here and now. You breathe in the spaciousness. You breathe out everything you are holding on to. We will talk about detachment and non-attachment, because detachment you might skip something in what you're learning, but non-attachment is you're not attached to the outcome of whatever happens with you. Big difference. Detachment can sometimes be repression. Non-attachment is that you're not attached to the outcome. You can experience it without falling apart. You can experience it with grief, sobs, uncontrollable, but you won't fall apart. And I want you to just for one moment look at the loss you've been through in your life, or the grief, or the pain. Doesn't matter what it was, the loss of a job, the loss of your income, the loss of your home, the loss of anything and everything, of a partner, a child leaving, going into their own lives. I want you to just look at any loss, a loss of a parent that might have affected you badly. Just give it space. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Don't start saying, this is how I was, this is what I did, maybe I could have done this. Don't pick it up. Just experience that loss, the pain in your heart, how it feels, how it felt. Experience it in the spaciousness of your mind. So it's painful, but it's also okay at the same time. just come to this beautiful, precious moment that we all gathered together on a busy Monday morning to talk about things that matter and that you hear, and how privileged it is that we all have access to this beautiful Dharma and a way of dealing with everything in our lives. Not a consistent way, just an understanding not to be attached to the unpredictability of life, to the pain, to what's happening to us, to the fact that people call us insane. We don't have time to really do any depth study on this. But what I've brought in here, I was doing all this in London. Wherever I had a minute, I was jotting down things, and then I came back. I was adding things all the time. But why the uncertainty and the unpredictability of the ego identity? Why do we have that? Why? The reason is because we have to learn to distinguish, as Traleb Gamchan says, between our ordinary consciousness, or mind as he calls it, and our transcendental consciousness. We call it primordial. He calls it mind in itself. It's an interesting thing with hyphens, mind in itself. Doesn't really matter what you call it, but just to differentiate. He says these are not so much two different types of consciousness or mind, or different levels of mind. You know, we think the one's on a higher level, the one's on a lower level. He says, no, it's rather the mind is the same, the exact same, but used in a different way. Okay, so ordinary consciousness. Now I want you to listen carefully, because I loved his description. I was reading his book called The Actuality of Being. And I'm going to take some lovely teaching from it. I was reading it when I had 1 minute, The Actuality of Being. And in it, he gives a definition. And I want you to listen to these definitions, because I really think they are amazing. The mind, the ordinary consciousness of which we are usually aware, is the human, intellectual, conditioned part of the mind, has the capacity, now this is important, to retain memories. Now remember, to retain memories. When I was giving you the memories from the photograph album that I was pulling apart, okay? And it's also the substratum of our karmic traces and dispositions. So it's very important for you to understand this, because that's the ordinary consciousness. It has our past conditioning and habitual mode of perceiving things, our history. It has ego's agenda, and ego is often paranoid about safety, hiding things that it doesn't want other people to know. It defines times and conditions, how long it should take you to get over it. You know, I can't stand it when people come to a bereaved person and they say, you know, it's 2 years. Haven't you gotten over it? And I go, don't do that ever. Because some people take 2 years, 5 years, 1 year, 1 month. I don't care. You do it in your own time and space. But ego says, now it's time for change. This is all in your ordinary consciousness, with its own agenda for many different reasons. And all of this often leads to management of everything, especially grief. the inability to know what to do. Here I am. I'm grieving in a heart war. I'm grieving in a heart sore thing, and I don't know what to do about it. That was so many people said to me, I don't know what to do about my grief. And then I would go, nothing. Just feel it with me. But Melanie, you can't imagine. I remember this woman whose daughter went to a school dance in matric. She looked absolutely exquisite, and she was in a car accident and got killed. Okay. I remember her sending me a letter that made me weep about how she was. She said, I was sniffing, clutching, grabbing. I was in her room. I took her jerseys. I smelt them. I took her clothes. I smelt them. I didn't know what to do with myself. Okay. That is what is in your ordinary consciousness. All to go back again. All the things, the human intellectual conditioning, the memories are in the ordinary consciousness, not in the transcendent consciousness. The karmic traces, the dispositions, the past conditioning, the habitual mode of perceiving things, our history, ego's agenda, it's all in that. Okay. And that's why the ego always says, I don't like this. I don't want this. And I thought this story was very cute of Nasruddin was eating a poor man's diet of chickpeas and bread. His neighbor, who also claimed to be a wise man, was living in a grand house and dining on sumptuous meals provided by the emperor himself. His neighbor told Nasruddin, if only you'd learned to flatter the emperor and be subservient like I do, you would not have to live on chickpeas and bread. Nasruddin replied, and if only you would learn to live on chickpeas and bread like I do, you would not have to flatter and live subservient to the emperor. Okay. Now, which is it? Which is it for you? Do we have to do it the way people think it ought to be? Or can we be the insane, crazy thing that Karen was talking about? You know, can we do it? And we have to look at that completely and totally. Okay. Now, let's compare that, and then I'll throw it open with transcendental consciousness that he talks about, which is called mind in itself. This is a basic awareness, free from memory, traces, dispositions, free from your past conditioning and habitual modes of perceiving things. It does not see the bereavement as tragic. So even though you see it in the beginning with your ordinary consciousness as tragic or the most terrible thing that happened to me, this part, the transcendental consciousness, does not see it as tragic. Okay? Because it knows, it understands what the mirror-like wisdom is for. Understands when you've got somebody, for example, who was totally dependent on her husband, and then her husband died, and then she says, I can't live, I don't know how to live. And he in the Bardos, I met him, he was also saying, I don't know how to live, I need to look after these little children she can't manage. But what she could see in the mirror is that this was necessary for her so she could learn to manage, and she did. She did learn to manage. She never would have had that not happened to her. So it does not see the bereavement as tragic, but more important, it's free from expectations, how we wish things to be or turn out. No judgments, no conceptual categories, just completely present with whatever is happening to you at that moment. It suspends our conventional way of perceiving things, of thinking, with its basic awareness of this transcendental consciousness. We simply have a new light of seeing things. We are fully aware. We are fully in touch. We are going through that pain, but it's not judgmental. It's a free awareness that allows things to be exactly as they are without our usual conditioning. an actual experience, not like the illusion of ordinary consciousness. Now that's how he writes about it, and I'll give you the rest of him, but let's just look at that at the moment, because it's really important, because Bern, you going into the next level of development. And if you can actually know in your mind, whatever you're going to go through now, which is inconvenient, hard, difficult, painful, taking the ground under your feet, you've got to know that you had the kind of, let's say, personality that needed ego's agenda of everything being absolutely perfect. Okay. And these are just things to take it and transcend it. That's all. And you've got a part of you that knows this. What do you think of his description? I'm going to give you more, but what do you think of this? I mean, doesn't it make sense that actually we want to try and be in that other state of consciousness, even though it does not take away the pain? It just makes you see the pain differently. The pain's there. You can't help it. You're loose. I can see you, man. You look tired today, Luce. You must rest yourself. Tell me what you feel about all of this.
Mel, in a different way, when your children immigrate, that to me has been a big loss.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you can still speak to them and this, that, but circumstances make it that it's a very big loss and difficult to get over it some days. Then other days when there's special things and that, and they're not there, it's difficult. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's very difficult.
It doesn't sound ridiculous to me in any way, because
But
all
you know yours as well.
are gone.
Yeah.
You know, the fourth one's going now. So there's absolutely nobody here. And it's not so, the children I don't miss so much, it's the grandchildren.
Yes.
But it's such
Absolutely.
a thing, because the little ones, you know, who rent your heart, you miss. But it's such a funny thing, you know. I say goodbye to them and I get on the plane, and I can never hardly talk in the taxi or whichever way I go. My son usually takes her. My heart is so sore, and I get on the plane, and in about 5 minutes, it just starts easing. And then I'm back, and then they're there, and I'm used to the videos and the little comments and the little photographs. And of course, it's a terrible loss because they're not around you. But at the same time, it's also, you know, when you use that transcendental consciousness, it's almost like you are prepared. Like I feel now going into a new phase of my life. Whatever it is, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? I feel the sort of pain of it. I feel the pain of losing all the things I'm familiar with and everything, probably. But I don't feel it as just a vacuum. Oh God, what am I going to do? Do you know what I'm trying to say? It changes. And I've learned from all the years of being separated from my kids, I've learned to just heal it very quickly. I don't repress, and I'm always aware of a heartache for the whole journey home. And then I come home, and then I've got all of you. You are all fun.
But Mel, I must also put in that I still have 2 wonderful grandchildren and a daughter here. I'm very blessed, but I miss those little ones growing up. I'm absolutely blessed with my family here. I really am.
And we've got no family here from 4 children.
Exactly.
Growing, and that's the end of all your children. They live in opposite ends of the world, and you just have to accept that. You too, Patricia. You also have had to accept so much loss. And, you know, I know you've kept your transcendental consciousness right the way through, even though it's been so painful, right? Yeah. I know she's also been through loss. Oh my God. You know, you can compete with Karen, with Boone. She's gone through so much loss. It's just unbelievable, you know. But in the end, you really can see when you go through a lot of painful things that's you had the energy, you had the makeup to be able to do that in a certain way. And if you didn't, then you have to develop it. It's really important, you know, to do that. Anyone else before we end today? And then we're going to go on a little more with this comparison. And then I want to go on to some of the, I haven't taken stuff from it, but Mark Epstein, and I haven't taken the stuff from his book, just some sentences, which I've put my own things, but he wrote a book, Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart. And I love that. Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart. And I love that title because I think it's really, you know, you can go to pieces and you don't have to fall apart. Anyone else want to say anything? Gail, you've been very quiet today. Kim, all of you, yeah.
Sorry, Mel, there's just one thing I want to say on a personal level. At our age, we similar ages, there's a loss of so much as well, just on a personal level. It is the progress of aging, but there's still that loss.
And you know what? The process of aging is really a very big thing, because I was asking myself, I said, everybody thinks you've got so much energy because you see me when I'm teaching and you think I've got, but I know that I don't have that energy anymore. I don't have that energy anymore. I just don't have it. And you look in the mirror, you see your ugly wrinkles and old face and everything else. But the point is that it's something you have to accept. It's something that your transcendental consciousness can accept so much more than your ego, which goes for another Botox injection or something, you know. It's really very important that. Sorry, Gail, you were going to say something.
No, I wasn't. I'm just taking it all in. Sorry, my eyesight's got so bad if I can't see what's going on. So no, it's no. Listen, nothing that I can't live with. But I mean, we all have loss.
Yeah.
We all have to deal with loss, and like it's part and parcel of being a human being. But all the love and the stuff that we've learned in our lives remains in our hearts all the time. We don't need stuff. We can be little hermits in the mountain. I actually love getting rid of stuff. I feel more liberated every time I get rid of more stuff.
And I would actually get rid of all my spiritual stuff. But what I'm afraid of is that if I really want material, I might just need to look it up, you know, rather than go and start from the beginning. But, you know, I know exactly what you're saying. I feel like throwing out the whole house and that's it, you know, and all the and your possessions and what you accumulate over the years is just unbelievable, you know.
Mel, you're never going to run out of material. You're just an absolute treasure trove of material, and Karen as well. Unbelievable.
But you know what? I don't even feel like I'm a treasure trove of material. I feel like the Guru Rinpoche inside me, you know, because I work with it all the time. Like I ask for things and they actually given to me so often. You know, obviously they won't be given to me if they're for ego's agenda or whatever the case. But, you know, I often think to myself, like, you know, I know, not Guru Rinpoche there. Guru Rinpoche there does everything for me. I can rant and rave when I'm in here and say, you know, this and this and this, but somehow or another, you know, the topics come and I feel like they come through me, not from me.
Mm.
And then it's amazing. And also, you know, what's also beautiful about aging is that a lot of us have a richness of experience to draw from. You know, if you've really had an active life and a lot of service to other people, there are always things you could draw from, you know, which make it alive and everything. And I just hope that now what Bern and Edith are doing on the playlists will really be useful for people. I hope so. You know, I really do. But anyway, everybody, I hope that you got something from today, even if you haven't gone through a tragic bereavement. And let's dedicate to all the people that are going through real bereavement, all those families in Gaza, all those families in Israel and America that have lost through the hostages, all the people everywhere that are going through loss in Ukraine and in every single place on this planet. Let's dedicate for all the bereaved people. May they get something from them. May they be able to go to some kind of primordial consciousness. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene chegana chibala tropaye sipe sole doadro warsho. And just to say one thing to all of you, you know, what also comes to me a lot is the fact that I really want to see if I don't have to go back into a limited incarnation again, you know, that at least there can be enough attainment to be able to do what you're doing, but without being bound in one single body, you know, where you've got to go through all the earthly things, the millions of earthly things. It makes such sense to me when people like Yeshe Tsogyal, you know, attain the rainbow body, and then she can be everywhere, all over the universes, and give what she gives without going through a birth with parents and the whole growing up and the whole everything. That's what I'd really like to do, if not in this life, in the next, for sure. But I think that's very important as well. So we stop.